Hello, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Story X Story podcast, where we discuss stories across pop culture, plus give you advice on creating your own. It is episode number 52, our last recording of the year, and I'm your co-host, Nigel.
I am Tazziii, content creator, streamer, and co-host.
And our guest for this final recording of 2020 needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. He is the host of WTF Weekly on Jinx Esports TV, an Elgato gaming partner. He could have been anywhere in the world right now, but he is here with us. Welcome, Mr. Midas.
It's so funny. People always compliment my intros, but that intro there was hard still. That was very hard. I like it. I like it. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me back and for the game we're talking about today. Woo!
Yeah, they can't hear you.
Can people hear me now?
Let me get my sound on and see if I can.
Hopefully people can now hear me.
Yeah, I believe so.
Cool.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, this is live. This is what happens. There's like a countdown, a list of things that are going to go wrong when you go live. We've hit number one. All right, so as I was saying that we had Midas on when we talked about The Last of Us Part 1, and we just had to get him back for Part 2. So for people listening to this on our podcast, on the audio version, we're going to put a link to episode 28 in the show notes so you guys can listen to that conversation. And yeah, everyone joining us live, stay tuned for what I'm sure is going to be a really interesting conversation on this game. So for people who haven't already subscribed to us, just to let you know that you can subscribe to Story X Story on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, pretty much wherever you get your podcast from. As always, you can send us your feedback to feedback@mayamada.com or shout at us on social media. You might want to after this episode, who knows? We are mayamada on Twitter, @mayamadatees on Instagram, and @Tazziii on both. So before we get into our main discussion, I just want to give a quick update as to what's happening in the Mayamada universe. And today is, like I said, the last recording of 2020. So at the end of this year, first of all, well done everyone for making it to the end of the year. We're going to be taking a break. So this is the end of season 2 of Story X Story. We'll be taking a break over January and then coming back with new episodes in February. But we will still have content to come. We're going to have bonus episodes over the Christmas period and a couple over January. So yeah, just make sure that you subscribe so you can catch all of those. One of those live streams, one of those bonus episodes is a live stream that we did where we had a bunch of past podcast guests to chat. I think that VOD is still up on our Twitch page, but we're going to be breaking that into 5 bonus episodes. We did 5 different segments, so 5 different podcast episodes. So that's going to be going in your feed as well. Another thing I wanted to let people know is that we are trying something new. We're going to put together a best of the year episode. So I've started putting this together. It's going to have some of the best bits from this season's recordings, also some bloopers, and I've started putting together the bloopers. Tazziii and I feature pretty well in that, and then some of the bits that we discuss before we start recording. So yeah, that's going to come, I think, at the end of this week, which is Christmas Day or Boxing Day, one of those days. I can't remember which. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, just in general, people that are following us know we do stuff with video games. So we have our next gamepad online event coming on January the 16th, plus other gamepad live streams from January and into 2021. So make sure you are subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you are following us on Discord. And if you want to jump in our Discord, follow us on Twitch so you don't miss a thing. All right, I think I covered sort of all the the admin notes for now. So we're just going to jump into this discussion. All right, so this is what you're all here for. So we are here to talk about The Last of Us Part 2, which is a third-person action-adventure game from Naughty Dog, which follows on from The Last of Us Part 1, and has received a fair amount of praise, criticism from fans, from the gaming media. It has also recently been awarded Game of the Year at the Video Game Awards. So we're going to talk about the game itself. We're going to talk about some of the controversy, or maybe not controversy, around the game, and just see what everyone makes of it. So spoiler alert, we are going into depth on The Last of Us Part 2 from beginning to the end, which Tazziii has just got to the end of the game.
Literally like 15 minutes before jumping on the call with Nigel, like finish the game.
We're going to be discussing all of that. If you want to dive deep into Part 1, like I said, episode 28 of the Story X Story podcast, you can get that game spoiled for you also. So you have been warned. So before we get into the discussion, I'm going to throw it out to Midas and Tazziii. I just want to recap, or do a quick recap of The Last of Us story. So The Last of Us Part 2 takes place 5 years after the events of Part 1. We now take control of Ellie, who is 19 years old, and along with Joel, has settled down in Tommy, Joel's brother, his community. They're living in relative peace within this thriving community. However, while on patrol, Joel and Tommy rescue a stranger, Abby Anderson, from an infected horde. They return to an outpost run by Abby's group, former Fireflies, who are now part of the Washington Liberation Front. They attack Joel and Tommy. Abby seeks revenge against Joel for murdering her father, a Firefly surgeon. Searching for the brothers, Ellie arrives to witness Abby beat Joel to death and swears revenge. She hunts down those responsible one by one and is confronted with the traumatizing physical and emotional consequences of her action. And I want to jump straight into those consequences. So Midas, before we put this, as I was putting these show notes together, I went back to our earlier discussion on Part 1, because at the end of that, you might remember I asked people what they want from Part 2. This was before it came out. So I kind of went back to that and seeing if basically everyone got what they wanted from this game. So that's my first question. Did you get what you wanted from this game? And let me just remind you, I think Midas, you said that you basically wanted Naughty Dog to tell the story that they wanted to tell and find out what that was about. Did you get that?
Oh, hell yeah. They told the story they wanted to tell more than I can't even now. I'm vexed at myself for even saying that statement. They really told their story. And I think like there's so much back and forth with the original Last of Us. Like, is Joel the bad guy? Well, they kind of sum that up in this one. He was a very, very bad guy, to say the least. And yeah, man, this game is an emotional roller coaster. Do you know what? Like, so I completed it in the summer. I really want to know how Tazzii's feeling right now. Because you see, when I finish the game, yeah, normally I finish a game and I feel like a relief or like an achievement. Fam, I felt like I needed to have a shower after finishing that game. But I was just like, just felt gritty and dirty. And I was just like, I couldn't even have come and done a chat after finishing that game because it was like emotionally draining. Like really drained me.
We're getting all the fresh emotions from Tazziii, and I remember from the last podcast episode, you said that you actually said you didn't want to know anything, or you said you wanted to see, like, you know, is there another cure? What else is happening out there? But otherwise, you just wanted to come in blind. Did you manage to come in blind?
For the most part, I came in blind. I did get a little spoiler while I was midway through playing it, but it was kind of something I'd predicted from like starting the game. So I wasn't too upset about it.
Fair enough.
Oh my God, just emotional roller coaster. Yes, I'm so glad that like the internet has this layer between us, because I was crying so much at the end of this game, because it was just like such the end of that journey, just like this, the emotional roller coaster finally coming to an end, and the releases that happen, and just like the emotion that's there, and the relationships that have like been built and broken, and oh my God, this game I would call it a masterpiece. This is like some amazing storytelling with a really well done way of like having the gameplay enjoyable, and even if you're like not, you can have the gameplay set to varying levels as well. So I think like the combination of the two have been done really well. And I'm still digesting and processing. So this whole podcast is just going to be like a live into Tanya's head.
We're basically going to be your shrinks right now.
Yeah. We're gonna help you get through it. Don't worry.
And I think the characters are just wow. There's so much depth to the characters here, and I'm really happy with the characters that exist in this, especially because obviously I saw stuff on the internet. It's like people complaining and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what they're complaining about, because.
Yeah.
Can I ask everyone a question? Did anyone get spoiled that Joel was gonna die? Because I was lucky enough not to get that spoiled for me.
No, I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah, because I played it quite early as well, so there was, I think a lot of people had played it before me, but I managed to sort of tunnel vision and get everything as I was playing it, which is really that's a big moment.
I managed to like somehow block out any Last of Us spoilers. I don't know how that happened, but wow. I'm so glad.
I actually muted The Last of Us Part 2 on my Twitter. Like I muted all of the words because
I remember you saying
like so many people were saying, oh my God, I just got it spoiled. And I was like, I really wanted to go into this blind and not know what's happening and just literally see what's going on.
Yeah. I think I'm glad I didn't stream it for that reason. Because people even, I hate when people do the thing where they hint at a spoiler, because to me that's a spoiler. Like, I'm going to start putting the puzzle pieces together. So just don't even hint at anything. And I'm so happy that somehow I managed to avoid the spoilers here for once.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go into the consequences. I will say that because I was listening to what I said, and I said that I wanted to see sort of Ellie make decisions and deal with the consequences of those. So I pretty much got exactly what I asked for. Because that's all. That's all this game is. All right. So do you want to start with Joel though? Speaking of consequences, should we start there?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So we had, pretty early on, you take control of Abby without quite knowing who she is or what her deal is. You then are led towards Tommy and Joel, as I mentioned in the recap, and you're still not quite sure until they get to the that room, and until Abby reveals like her motivation. So she is looking for Joel, and she finds Joel, and she takes Joel out. My first question is, I don't know how many questions I've asked so far, but my next question is, did you think like they were going to go in that direction? Because when I got to that point, you did.
Immediately. As soon as I knew that Abby and Owen were looking for someone, I was like, it's Joel. Like, there's no other person. Like, it's Joel.
But not even that they were looking for him, that they were taking Joel out at that stage in the game.
I kind of predict, they were looking from him. I was like, I'm gonna guess it's Joel, and I'm gonna place my bets on that he's gonna get if not seriously injured, killed.
Yeah.
And
It's so
Midas.
funny because Naughty Dog are so smart, because when they first brought out the trailer of like Ellie playing the guitar and Joel there, people are like, oh, what if Joel's dead and what if that's a ghost and blah, blah, blah. And then they made all of their trailers to make it look like Dina was going to die. Because that's what I always thought. I thought that Dina, Elle's girlfriend, like all of the trailers made it look like she got taken. So I thought it was going to be that kind of revenge tale to go and rescue her, and Joel's going to help you, and then Joel gets messed up. I never in any part of my soul would think Naughty Dog would make you play as the character that is going to murder your favorite character. Like, and not even just your favorite character in the game, one of your favorite characters in history. Like, could you imagine the first time you played as Waluigi and you killed Mario? That's how it is. Like who does that? Or the first time you ever play as Tails and you kill Sonic.
Like,
who does that?
It was definitely a brave take. And I think for me, I didn't watch the trailers. I watched the one trailer of Ellie playing the guitar.
Yeah, me too.
And I didn't watch anything else. So I was going into it with literally nothing. Just that there's loads of controversy around it. And then so I was just going off what they put in front of me at that moment and knowing the characters. And I was like, Joel's done bad stuff. Like,
he's done a bit.
Something was gonna come after him. It was inevitable. I knew it.
Yeah, because at the moment I was like, so first of all, to Midas's point, like, yeah, I think that was amazing. They made you play as the character, because you, at that moment when they're saving you, you're like, oh yeah, cool, we're all good. Like they're here to rescue me. We're all going to be friends. And it just turns, like the mood just turns so drastically. And when it does turn, and she's like, you know, you kind of know what you've done and things. I'm like, I don't know you. Like, what have I done to you? Like, I'm trying to think in my brain, like, where have we crossed paths and everything? Like, I feel like I'm being killed for something I didn't even do. Obviously, I know I'm wrong because I did like the most in that game. I just want to shout out to Tomoki Thing Yuri, or Thing Yuri on Twitter, because they said, did killing Joel early on in the game leave you feeling numb for the rest of the game? So for me, I became detached from everything and it seemed bleak and joyless. I will say, when at that moment, and I think we're going to get into this because this is kind of where Naughty Dog wanted to take this game, I was ready for vengeance. Like, if anyone's seen, have you guys seen Gladiator or remember Gladiator? At that moment when he's like, I shall have my revenge in this life or the next.
100%.
That was
100%.
me. I was like, let's go, let's find every one of these people one by one, we'll take them out. So that was my feeling. Right? How did you both feel like at that moment?
It's crazy because Tazziii was like saying like it's a masterpiece, and I feel like I've never like experienced emotion like this in a video game in my life, like never. And one thing that I always credit The Last of Us for, like the initial Last of Us, is really pushing storytelling in a video game, like pushing the medium of storytelling. And I feel like The Last of Us Part 2 pushed my emotion to a way that I never knew a video game could. But because a lot of that emotion was feeling horrible and feeling vengeful and feeling sad and negative connotations, as much as like I love the game, like the game's not even my game of the year. Like I can't even have it as my game of the year because those emotions that it put me through with taking Joel, like I put those emotions to like negative feelings, and the game did the right thing. It's not like it did something wrong, because that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to stir up feelings in me that they didn't think that I could, and change my perspective on Abby, which obviously we're going to talk about soon. But yeah, so no, I don't think it took me off not wanting to play the game, but it really made me hate this character in such a way that then when they change it and make you go back and play as her, fam, I wanted to smash up my controller.
Yeah.
That's
What about you,
really
Tazziii?
interesting. Like, I have like a completely different feeling for it. So when it happens, obviously I was sat, like, I love Joel. I think he's such a, as a character, I just find him amazing. He's like that rusky kind of older guy that's just like on a journey, and
he's weathered, he's been through stuff.
Yeah, he's complex, he's got history, he lost his daughter, and then he found like basically an adoptive daughter. Like, he's gone through so much, and he's as a person, he's grown and he's learned, and he's slid back a bit, and then so I think he's a great character. And I was upset that he died, but also I was like, he had it coming. Like, as much as I don't want him to die, I don't want any of them to die, he had it coming. And this is a world where everyone is fighting for survival. It's not like someone can just go and get a therapist when they're dealing with complex emotion. Killing is like
podcast.
Yeah, killing is second nature. Like, you have to do it in your daily lives. You're either been born into this, or you lived through losing everything. So either way, you're messed up. Like, no one's okay in this world, right? Everyone's morals are blurred. Everyone's got just a need to survive and protect their own. So I was like, yeah, I'm sad, but I definitely didn't feel detached at all. If anything, I was like immediately sitting there thinking, why did they kill him? Like, what is this? Why are we playing as Abby?
Yeah.
What is it done? What is the cause of this? And I was already thinking, like, to be honest, I'd already thought that it had something to do with the hospital and Joel killing everyone, because that's the last thing that we saw in the previous one. So why would it not be? So yeah, I was just excited at that point. I was excited to like navigate this journey, find out what's happening, like, and I was just ready to like to learn what these people were feeling. I was like, I just wanted to know how Ellie was going to cope with it, how Tommy was going to cope with it, like what was going to go down. And I as much as I felt sad and like all these negative emotions, I felt excited to find out what happened. It's a thrilling story. Like, it's a story. It's not like these people are real, and I know that, and I can detach from that.
You
so
can separate. Yeah, we'll get to that like a separation.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm like, these aren't real consequences. I want to just know what happens. If people can watch Game of Thrones, I don't know how people can not play this game. Because
fair point. Yeah, okay.
And this is less extreme.
So, I mean, like you said, the consequences were about Joel killing the surgeon, and we later sort of learn what his relationship to Abby is, her father, and then what the repercussions of that. So, like, Midas, does it? Because like one of the discussions like we had in the first podcast was that for me, I was questioning at the end of the first game, like, is Joel the bad guy? Like, am I the bad guy? Do you think that has that changed your stance on that?
Yeah, 100%. Joel was the bad guy.
Okay, cool. We can all establish that.
And I was always riding for Joel. Like, I've always been riding for Joel. But yeah, Joel was the bad guy. And I think what blows me away with this game is, so I was complete opposite of Tazziii. Like, the reason why this affects me more than something like Game of Thrones is because I feel like I don't really have a connection with those characters. Because I spent so much hours playing as Joel. Like, I feel so connected to him in a way that I don't feel connected to anyone in that show. And when the way they shot this, and Joel's on the floor and Ellie's begging, and you're looking through Ellie's eyes and looking at him, and he's trying to reassure you. He's trying to reassure you, and he's like, it's all good. And that crushed something in me. That crushed something in me. Like, I saw someone I really know, like, lost. And it made me, I felt that rage for the first more than half of the game. Like, I felt that rage, and every time Ellie killed someone and every time I put a shank in someone's neck, other than the girl with the PSP, I felt bad about that one.
Oh,
but like
coming out of the
every
water.
single time, yeah, I felt bad about that one. But everyone else, like, I didn't care. I was on by any means necessary. And then I think Naughty Dog are extremely smart because Abby physically she's hench. She's a very muscly woman. So they instantly make her seem like a fair, like someone you would be afraid of because she's intimidating. She has an intimidating presence. So you instantly, this person who's got an intimidating presence has killed the character you love the most, and then they want to take me back and I have to play as that character. Are you mad?
So,
and it is one of the greatest storytelling tropes I've ever played.
Yeah, because you go on that journey and you go on that revenge and you're going into that deep darkness, you and Ellie. And then at the moment where Abby catches up with Ellie, and I'm going to do like Last of Us, we're going to jump around time-wise here, but the moment Ellie and Abby sort of collide, the game immediately takes you all the way back to play as Abby. And I was like, oh, hold on a second. But like you say, that's the thing. And I think this is part of the controversy around this game, in that it forces you to play as someone that you hate in terms of the game. Like, maybe not Tazziii. Tazzii's like on board for this this adventure, but like me and Midas, we hate Abby, and you're now having to play as this character. So I think that, and it's a tough thing because one, just emotionally and sort of from the player reaction and some of the reactions we've seen, it's a tough thing because we're now having to have empathy, or we were being forced to have empathy for this other character. But even just storytelling, because if I had one criticism I had at the time is that it upset what I thought was the momentum, because it was a charged scene where Abby's, Jesse? Ellie's friend. Yeah, so Jesse's been killed. It looks like Abby. Yeah. No, Tommy's been taken out. It looks like Ellie's next, and then it is like it's a hard cut back. So that on the storytelling kind of messes with the momentum. And I think for a lot of people, it would have been a case of not understanding or not knowing how much of the game. I think that's the key thing. You don't just go back and play as Abby. You play a whole other arc as Abby. So you play the past. So Ellie's on this journey where I think it's over 3 days. She's searching for Abby, and she's, like I say, going into this darkness. You then play those same 3 days as Abby. Like, how did you feel? So Midas, you mentioned like you just hated playing as that character. How long did that last? Like, how much empathy did you or not gain for Abby?
It's crazy because as soon as you start playing as that character and you see when she's young and you see her dad and you're like, I get it. I understand, Naughty Dog. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to make me feel sympathetic for this woman. I ain't feeling sympathetic for her. She killed Joe. And then I come to the stadium and I see like Owen and the pregnant lady. I can't remember her name. And I didn't even realize she was pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, when I killed her, she was pregnant. Because I didn't realize that. And I felt bad, but I was just like, yeah, but I still love Joe and Ellie. And it took me a long time. And Naughty Dog, they're so sick because then what they do is I'm playing as this character and I'm just not enjoying being this character. I just don't care about her. And then they introduce two characters who I just instantly get. So that's Lev and Yara. And I start connecting with them. And then like there's a scene where Lev and Abby are on the bridge. And Abby says something and I laugh and I got angry with myself. I'm like, don't make me laugh. I don't like her. Like, and they start chipping away at me, chipping away bit by bit. And then even when we go back to the point where you're Abby and you're going to shoot at Els and all of that and you got to fight, like even then I didn't want Abby to win. Like I was like, I know you've been through it, like, but That's
even
my
then?
character. But you know what
Wow.
changed?
What
The
changed?
farm scene. The farm
Really?
scene was like, she finally had a good life. Like, life has changed for her and she's able to move on. Like, okay, Joe's dead. It's upset me too. Let's move on. And you know what? Do you know how scared I was in that scene? I was like, something's going to happen. When she was sitting on the tractor with the baby, I'm like, someone's going to shoot her. Like,
yes.
I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, no way Naughty Dog are going to make this end in a good way. And then as soon as Elle was like, I can't continue. As soon as Ellie was like, I have to go and get revenge. That's when I realized, like, what are you doing? Like, you've got your family, you've got your girlfriend, you've got your child, you've got the farm. Like, what are you doing? And then that was the moment I didn't want her to go after Abby, and I didn't want her to kill Abby. And I was like, raw, that's when I realized that I started sympathizing from the point of view of Abby. And I didn't like
Interesting.
playing as
That's
Abby
far into the game. I thought.
Yeah, the whole time I played as her, I didn't enjoy it. But when I got to that moment, I was like, Ellie, what are you doing, man? Just chill and settle, fam. Like, what's wrong with you?
And this is like one of the things that sort of makes me think about, like, why everyone's so angry at this game and angry that they had to play as Abby, but Abby was trying to get revenge and Ellie was essentially just became the same as Abby. And then again, they don't have therapy. Like, Ellie couldn't settle down because she didn't know how to talk, and there's not somewhere to go, and then which led to like her finding Abby again, and that scene where they're fighting it out and they're just, and I was like, this is healthy.
Wow.
This is, and and you're playing, and I'm like, I don't
want to go to any therapy session with Tazziii.
This point, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what they're gonna do at this. I'm so impressed by Naughty Dog's storytelling that I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen here, but what I hope is that no one dies here and that they just hash it out, because clearly right now they don't know how to talk. We've seen this whole journey. They don't know how to talk. It's not a really world that's set up to like talk out your problems. It's, kill before you're killed.
Yeah.
And they have this really beautiful moment where they're fighting it. Also, Abby's weight has obviously reduced, her muscles reduced, so it's more of a fair fight going on, because if Abby had still been like that amazing physique she had, then boy, Ellie wouldn't have stood a chance. But and it was like you both just need to get that anger out and let it go. And I was so happy with what they'd done, because I was like, please, I was like reluctantly punching Abby and like stabbing. I'm like, please don't. Like, they're just struggling. These are two people that are just trying to cope and like with so much. And then in a world that's like, what's You know
what's really interesting? Listen, we've got like two ends of the spectrum here. We've got, so Tazziii, you have like endless understanding and more power to you. And Midas, you've got no understanding. Because when you said like it was the point at the farm where you started feeling for Abby, that's most of the game. You weren't letting go like until for the whole game. Wow, okay. I was somewhere in between you two, so I definitely hated playing as Abby at the start, because same thing, like this is the character that killed Joe. I'm looking for you, like you're the one I'm trying to end. But what they did is, and I guess they used the flashbacks for this, but they also use your interactions with the other members of the WLF or Wolf, whatever, and they not normalize. I'm going to go back to this word empathy. I think for me, this is going to come up a lot in this discussion, where they made you see it from her perspective, and to the point about the like Joel being the bad guy, you then understand like his actions to save Ellie in the last game meant he killed someone who meant just as much or more, if not more, to Abby in that game. So you understand, like, and you get the, I think Tomoki Thing Yuri has mentioned, like when there was a point where they go back to the past with Abby and her father, and they show him begging to Marlene to perform the operation, and she asks what if it was Abby he needed to kill. So it's all about that perspective, like, you know, someone's hero, Joel, is someone else's like worst enemy. So I definitely had that feeling of I don't want to play as this character. I want to find this character and kill this character. But then once you see more of her story and her perspective, and like I think for me it's like her seeing the interaction with her dad, just like, who's a nice guy. He's probably like the nicest guy in this whole guy, I know, in this whole world. It's just like, yeah, we murdered him when we really didn't have to.
I wanna ask a question, and it's if we'd started the game from Abby's perspective and got Abby's story first, do you think you would have felt differently about Abby?
So.
Yeah, of course we would have.
Yeah,
of course we would have. I think, do you know one thing that's really amazing about this game? And it literally took me until the end when you see the bolt. And in the first game, I was iffing and ahhing if Joe was the bad guy. Ellie's the bad guy, and Abby isn't, because Abby, when she killed Joe, she let everyone else go. She could have killed everyone else, but she let Tommy and she let Ellie go. And even at the end, the fight where Tazziii loved so much, she didn't even want to fight. And the only reason she fight is because Ellie was threatening to kill her, Lev, and had a knife to Lev's throat. So that's the only reason Abby even fought. So Ellie was willing to risk lose her family, which she did. She was willing to kill. She killed a pregnant lady. Like she was by.
You didn't know she was pregnant though. Just for the
Ellie didn't know she was.
She had a big coat on.
So again, okay. Well, even if she didn't know, she was killing all of her friends, whatever. And as much as Abby wanted revenge, Abby was going for one person. The person who killed my father, nobody else. It's just about that person. And that's why at the end I was like, she's not even a bad guy.
I have a really big gripe with any of the characters we play. As quite a lot of the people being called bad guys. In this, I felt that, and we don't even really know them, the only people that I thought they're the bad guys, bad guy was Isaac. Because he didn't seem to have a motivation that was personal. He just seemed like someone that wanted power and control. Whereas everyone else, I don't think they're bad. They're not the bad guy. They're just humans that have complex emotions. Like everyone has done just as much bad and good. And I think it's when they overcome that, they're just people that have done bad things. And have gone through. Well, we're holding it to a standard that's of our society's what is deemed bad, but like killing is literally part of life for them. I don't think we can hold them to our moral standards of today, because even the scene where Ellie does kill Owen and Mel, Owen attacks Ellie. Ellie defends herself.
True, and then it kind of
I'm not. It's not to say that she wouldn't have killed him, but he did attack her. And in this world, you don't have time to think like, should I use non-lethal defense because everyone is packing? Like, you don't have that space to think about it. And then we also have the idea that the WLF have a very militant attitude. They are kill on sight. So they've all done some hella bad shit. Sorry, hella bad stuff. Whereas all of them, they're from Jackson, and in Jackson, if people come across them, they don't just kill on sight. But they've done this thing that's been motivated by revenge and clearly in a dark place. And I don't think anyone's really a bad guy. They're just people struggle like coping with.
I will say that, like, Midas touched on one thing where, like, Abby was after one person and that was it. And in that moment where, in the theater where she does catch up with them, she says a line that that made me stop in that moment. She's like, it's something I gave you the chance to live and you wasted it. And for me, that was like oh wow, that made me think about all the actions I'd been taking up until that point as Ellie, and then started to make me question, oh, is now Ellie the bad person in the context of the game, just because of the things she had done that, to Abby's point, she didn't have to do. Like, Abby came with after one person and that was it. She let the rest go. So yeah, it did make me think like that. Abby's journey did make me think about what I'd done in the previous game and what I was doing in the current game. And for me, like, we spoke about some of the controversy around this game, and I know there was a lot of controversy about Naughty Dog forcing people to play so much of the game, like it was a good 10 hours stretch playing as Abby, and it made me think about the where we are in the world now. And I felt that a lot of the reaction, and you guys can tell me what you think, is just that, and I feel like an inability of people to empathize with others. And in this game, what it forced you to do is see from the perspective of the monster, because that's who Abby was at that point in the game. She was the evil person who had killed a person you had feelings for in Joel. And just that inability or just resistance to wanting to see anything, because it's harder to take someone else's side and see from their perspective. It's a lot easier just to label them as the bad guy, because then I can sort of like dehumanize you and I can do anything to you and it's fine because you're the bad guy. You deserve it. You had it coming. And to Midas's point about just the feelings in this game, and I appreciated this game because it took you to those places, even though they're not all positive places. And I've had, there were two experiences in this game where I genuinely did not want to play parts of the game. That was the part where Abby catches up with Ellie and then you now have to chase Ellie and they fight. And then the part at the end of the game where they fight again. Those are two moments. And I can't think of any other game where I've had moments where I genuinely do not want to do what I need to do in this game. Don't know, have you guys had that before?
I literally, at that last fight when you got a stab, I literally wasn't I stopped. I didn't press any button to see if something could happen, because I was like, I can't do it. I can't just shank her like that. And to even continue on with your point about with Abby, I think Taz is really right. We kind of live in, and you as well, we live in this world where He-Man's the good guy and Skeletor's the bad guy, and that's it. Skeletor is just bad, and there's no reason him being bad other than him being a bad guy. And this game kind of forces you to look at different people's perspective. I think what's really amazing is I love Dina. I think Dina was such a dope character, and I love her dynamics with her and Ellie. And one thing that was really, really striking me, Dina was always why did they kill him? What has he done? What have they come? Why did they come for him? She kept on pestering Ellie to find out what it is, and Ellie was it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They killed him. I'm going for revenge. And I think she just had that anger in her, and she didn't care. But I also think that's because of one, her own guilt. And you're going to see how I'm bringing this all together in a minute. Her own guilt because of her not having a relationship, her kind of pushing Joe away. And then I feel like people's reaction to this game is them living in their own sorrow right now. 2020 has been the hardest year I've ever known as long as I've been on this earth. Most people's escapism was Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing was how people escaped, a really happy and bright game. And then Naughty Dog, one of the most beloved gaming companies in the world, The Last of Us, one of the most beloved games, they're let's give you more suffering. And I don't think a lot of people could cope with it. I don't think a lot of people could cope with that pain on top of the pain that they're going through in their real life. Like 9 times out of 10, not everyone, but most people play videos to escape. Who was escaping? Because you were just going from pain into even more pain.
I think that's a really important point. And I think to play this game and really get the most out of it is to detach yourself from, you are not these characters. You're not anyone here. You're not Joel. You're not Ellie. You're not Abby. You're following their story. You're being told their story. And as much as you might be pressing the buttons to make that happen, that's just the equivalent of you pressing play on like a DVD or something. Like you're not, you are being taken for the journey here. You are not driving. You are not in the driver's seat.
But that's the thing with video games.
A passenger.
Like video games have that, because it gives you the agency, you control the player, you get that attachment to Joel. Like we've played this whole sequence with Joel. We are Joel. So when you kill Joel, it's almost, I don't know, maybe we're going too much into the psychoanalysis. Although I don't think we are, but maybe we are. But I don't know. It's like Joel suffering the repercussions of his actions is on me, like me as the player. And I feel that's some of it as well. You're basically telling, like you say, it's confirming Joel's the bad guy, and here is the result of what your actions. So it is like people, it is that inability to detach. And it's a pro and a con, because that's what makes video games so cool. You have that agency, but you also then kind of you get attached to characters. So when they mess with the characters, then you get upset.
I think they've actually unlocked like a new layer of what video games can do in storytelling, because you are forced to be them, but you do also have to detach.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you do that? So it creates a whole new dynamic that hasn't really been done, because you can't do that in film or TV. And video games are so used to being the character. And then now it's like you have to go through the motion of the character, but you have to only to understand, and you have to be able to, like, once you've finished going through that, you have to be able to then separate it. But to go back to answer your question about really struggling to play this game, I couldn't even do this in the first one, because zombies are freaking scary, and just I have to stop with this game. And I've played horror games where you are forced to do something you don't want to do. So I feel like I was prepared for this, this moment of being forced to do something. And then I just wanted to comment on something that Finguri said about what this game really addresses, is that vengeance is a fool's game. And I think that's true, because Joel, someone could have come after Joel for like many things that we don't know about, because Joel was like not, he was probably not a great person, and it is commented on the stuff that Joel and Tommy have done in their past. But Joel's getting come after as a consequence of one of his actions. I don't think it's because he's a bad guy. I think it's just a consequence of his action to save Ellie. I don't think he was completely wrong in saving Ellie. I think he done it in the wrong way. And then Abby had a choice. She didn't have to go after Joel. She didn't have to. So she went after Joel, and then you start the cycle of the revenge cycle, and it just continues and continues until two people decide that we're not going to do this anymore.
Someone has to break the cycle.
Yeah. So you can call anyone a bad guy here, because they've all done stuff. Everyone had a choice at some point to do something or not do something, even down to the conversation with Abby's dad. Like Abby's dad was a very nice person, but also he was like, let's just kill this girl and for this cure. But no one ever thought, why don't we just wake Ellie up, see what she like, let her have a choice. No one at any point thought let Ellie have a choice. So Joel and the doctor are just as bad as each other, because both of them were like, let's take away that choice. Let's not even ask her. could have been quite simple. And also one of the things that really bugs me is that Mel was a student of the doctor, and you're telling me this doctor knew how to, like, had at least an inkling on how to create a cure and didn't pass any of that knowledge on to anyone else. I found so many notes in this game, and he was the only brain in the world that could possibly figure out how on earth to create a cure, and they're still like trying to kill each other. Like, that's the thing that like bugs me. And obviously, if for that to be a thing, it wouldn't have happened. But everyone's just kind of lost hope and is on this revenge spree. And no one's thought, wait, Ellie's still alive. There are doctors and science still. We can still figure something out. It's not. It isn't the end of it. And even if she was dead, it was something in her brain that she needed to be dead to use it. So. What are we doing here? Why is no one thinking about like when we're going to make this cure? Like no one's thought of that.
I know we got to wrap up soon, but one thing I really want to say as well, because we haven't really spoken about it. I know Tazziii mentioned it briefly. Is the gameplay in this game is incredible
I wanted to get to that.
Well. Like the game, like we always talk about the story because The Last of Us has got some amazing story, but the mechanics in this game, like some of the stuff that they've done, like pushing games forward. Like I love to play stealth in games. I love to feel like I'm super smart and I'm taking out one person one at a time. And I've never played a game where an NPC is walking away and then he's turning over his back and he's looking over this way and then like I gotta wait, or like I can't just stay one place because someone's got a dog and the dog's smelling me, so I gotta always move.
I know.
You have to mention
this game. The controversy has taken over what this game is, but mechanically, I think this is the best game Naughty Dog's ever created. Like the mechanics in this game, like even just when you're making your gun, like adjusting your gun, crazy.
Because it is it's very similar. In some ways, it's similar to the previous game, but it feels like they've refined and honed it and added sort of additional dimensions. So like, so that there are a couple of things for me in that the dog you mentioned where you kind of like the human AI, they've improved. So you don't just have the standard paths. You have to like pay attention to where they're actually looking and make your move. When they introduced a dog and now the dogs can smell your trail, that changed like the way I played the game. Because now I have to become an animal murderer and it's a weird thing where in some ways I gave more thought to killing the dogs than I did to humans. But there was a point, I can't remember which level, but there was a point where I was like, I don't want to kill the dog. But if this dog smells me out, it's over for me. So this dog needs to go. And then that's when I became an animal murderer. And then the other part for me where I now sort of mix this in with the gameplay is the improvement on the infected as well. And in the introduction of new types of infected. So again, I thought I knew how to deal with different infected. You had, the runners, the clickers, you kind of had a strategy. And then there's that level where you play as Ellie and you're in that abandoned office. And you go to there's like a doorway, and then just through the doorway you hear, I'm like, what is that? Like what? Some zombies that can, or infected that can run, that can hide from your sense, your hearing senses. That just again threw the whole thing out for me. So I really appreciated those two additions. Stealth
zombies were definitely a thing, and the ones that came out of the wall, they weren't in the first one, right? I don't seem to remember them.
I don't remember that.
There was a whole lot. And again, completely agree. One of the first things I noticed with this game was the mechanics and also how they teach you them. Like it doesn't have a out and out tutorial, but it's always giving you tutorials, whether it's for a flashback or something else. It's like, you're going to need this mechanic soon. We're going to teach it to you in this really beautiful way or really interesting way. And I thought that was really well done and really clever. And I really hate that they made me kill dogs. I tried to avoid killing dogs so much to the point where I'd kill humans. So that their dogs wouldn't need to find me.
Just like be lost.
I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, they're like, and why'd they make me kill the dogs? Oh. And then they make you play with them. Or they don't make you, but you get to play with them. And I'm like, oh, can I not just pet the dog? Why you make me kill the doggy? What part of this game?
Were there any kind of like really standout moments that, I know we've spoken about a few, but like times in the game, whether it's characters or moments in the game that kind of stuck with you? Midas, what do you think?
I would say 2 moments that really stood out for me is, like Tazziii was saying, the training, the snowball fight. That was just the sickest way to learn the shooting mechanics. Like really incredible. And my favorite scene, the weed house, when they go to the weed house and it's just they get high, like the weed house, sick. I love that. I love that whole. I love their interaction, how things. So that was 2 scenes that kind of stood out the most to me.
Okay, what about you, Tazziii?
2 moments for me that really stood out was when we start playing as Abby when we're in Seattle, and just like being in awe of her, like her build. She's just such this amazingly strong woman, and like that was just magic for me, especially because I've been watching The Mandalorian, and there is also a very built woman in that. And it's just like so nice to see like strong women,
like literally strong.
Yeah,
she was crushing people with her arms, with her biceps.
Yeah, the first time like I took a zombie head off with, and I was like, I'm very impressed and intimidated right now.
Yeah, I had similar feelings. I didn't understand the hate for Abby though, like because I mean I don't want to give too much like space to just mindless criticism like that, but it's just weird. I appreciated her character, and like you said, also impressed and slightly intimidated by the way she was just taking out zombies and infected with her biceps.
Yeah, and then the other bit is like another character moment, and it's when you're playing as Abby, and we're with Lev, and we're trying to get to the hospital, and we are seen by some of the Seraphites, and they call Lev Lily. And then once you sort of get past that first bit, she's kind of Abby's just like doesn't say anything about it, and then Lev is like, "Did you hear what they were calling me?" And it's just a beautiful moment between the two, where Abby's like, "Do you want to talk about it?" And Lev's like, "No," and just like, "Then we won't talk about it. It's fine." And that moment nearly brought me to tears, because it was so beautiful and understanding, and to see that in a video game, I thought it just touched me. And then it just made me really want like some DLC like they done with The Last of Us Part 1, but where we follow Lev and Lev's sister and find out more about that and the Seraphites. They're so interesting.
Yeah, I did appreciate that whole section, because even with Lev and Yara, again, I kind of came to appreciate them like through Abby. I think you mentioned that, Tazziii, and there was a moment early in their meeting where you get stuck in that kind of like a house or some kind of building, and the brother and sister are trying to open the door, so they are helped out, and then they kind of, or you think they abandon you, or like Abby thinks they abandon you. That was one of the moments. There's like, we talked about emotions, and that was one of the moments where I felt the character, like I was upset with those two, like, because I thought they abandoned me. And then even when they came back, I was like, what took you so long? I've had to go through so much with these infected. So I appreciate that. There was a lot in the flashbacks that I did appreciate, and I'm going to talk about sort of flashbacks a bit more when I do the storytelling tip. But I think for there's just so many. I've already spoken about one of my highlights, which is the meeting of Abby and Ellie in the theater, when Abby says, I gave you a chance to live and you wasted it. That really just stuck with me. And then one flashback I will speak about is the moment when Joel confesses to Ellie about, what really happened, because I don't know. I mean, we talked about what we wanted from the second game, but I wasn't sure the way this first game ended, if they were going to address that. And I guess if they were going to bring out a second game, they would have had to. But I kind of liked the way it came about, because it wasn't, it was forced in that, like, Ellie got to a point where she demanded it. But in terms of me playing it, it was an unexpected moment, because I remember playing through it and like, oh, we're going to have this discussion that needs to happen, to your point, Tazziii, about sort of speaking it out and therapy. And I'm going to give another flashback. Actually, I lied. I'm going to talk about flashbacks. And then the other one that kind of hit me was the very final one, when as Ellie and Abby are fighting on the beach, another moment I just did not want to happen. Ellie has a flashback to her moment with Joel on the porch, where the first time you kind of, because the game starts with their relationship really icy, and you're not necessarily told why immediately, and it's sort of built up. And that moment at the end that kind of changes, pulls Ellie back from the brink. It's that moment where she can't forgive Joel for what he did, but she wants to try. And again, I think that kind of going back to the idea of empathy and perspective is that understanding that I don't agree with what you did. I don't agree with how it made me feel, but I'm going to try and see it from your perspective. I'm going to, like, make an effort to repair this relationship. And it was such a, sort of subtle moment that meant so much in the context of the whole game and what the game means, that I really appreciate that in the video, in the game. And the Rat King, I have to shout out the Rat King, because that was a messed up moment.
Do you know what? I forgot to say my most incredible moment. I'm so sorry to just jump in. Best moment of the whole game for me was the rocket scene. That scene almost drove me to tears, because Joel's, and I think that scene wouldn't have even been as powerful if Joel was alive, but because Joel's dead now, and that scene rocked me. Like, that scene was probably the closest scene to tears almost coming from my eyes. That was, woo!
That was
that's why it took me so long to like Abby. That scene there. I couldn't, after that scene, it just took my revenge level from 9 to 78.
Because that was probably like the one genuine just moment of happiness in the whole game. It was just pure happiness. You see the height of the relationship between those two. So yeah, I guess when you contrast that to what you witnessed up until that point, I get that. All right, so as we sort of wrap up this discussion, because we can talk about this game forever and ever, but since it's out, since we played it, it has been awarded. I was going to say nominated, awarded the Game of the Year in the Video Game Awards. So Midas, you said that you don't think it's not your Game of the Year. Do you think it should be Game of the Year? Because like I touched on, at the top, the controversy over it, and I've seen a lot of sort of criticism around the game in terms of like the diversity angle. I feel there's, it gets a backlash for including characters that are, well, just every sort of, female, gay, trans, all that. And that seems to be like a knock against it. I touched on the empathy side of things, and I think forcing people to play as Abby and having to empathize with her for so much of the game, people see that as a knock. So what's your perspective? I know it's not your personal Game of the Year, but how do you think it stacks up against games that have been released this year?
The reason why it's not my personal Game of the Year is two reasons. One, I'm the biggest Final Fantasy fan, so nothing would have been enough to beat that anyway. But secondly, as well, as I play video games to escape into some kind of enjoyment, take me out of my life. And I think I never felt like I could really escape into that world. So not even so much about that playing as Abby or stuff like that. This Naughty Dog make incredible games, and like as Tazziii said, this is a masterpiece in making games. Like, everyone's seen all of the madness that's happening right now with Cyberpunk 2077. This game came out, I didn't even see a bug in this game. There's probably one in there, but I didn't see anything. It was seamless. Like, this was like, I got a PS5 now. This was playing on a PS4, and it was like it was like the next gen. Like the graphics were beautiful. Like there was times where I walk up to someone. I remember walking up to someone in the town in Jacksonville, and the person turned their head to look at me. I was like, "Raw, they know I'm here." Like this game was incredible, and I understand why it won the Game of the Year. Just for me, it couldn't be my Game of the Year because that's not what I want from a video game. And well, I'm lying. That is what I want from a video game because I love narratives, but I just never felt like that game let me escape.
Yeah.
I always felt like it was just added more and more anxiety into my already anxious life. And just one thing, like obviously there's been a lot of controversy around crunch and dev teams having to crunch and Naughty Dog's making their employees crunch and stuff like that. And obviously that's a bigger conversation where a lot of people are saying it shouldn't win game direction of the year because of that. But I also believe that every single person shouldn't be blamed in a team. Like some of these devs, they've worked their hearts off to get this game out. And I think it's unfair that people downput them because of these decisions that management have made overall.
Yeah, no, I think, you're right. The crunch thing is an important topic. I want to see if we can have a discussion with sort of people who make games at some point in the future. But I agree completely where, again, I feel like empathy just and understanding people's perspective, the people that, just worked on this game so hard, it's you don't want to knock them for the decisions of management. And I feel there's a lot of that in some of this backlash. But Tazziii, what do you think?
So I can remember what the other nominees for Game of the Year was. So I was like, let me go check. And then I noticed the description of Game of the Year is recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. And as that as a descriptive, then The Last of Us is definitely hits that mark, that statement. It would definitely be used to describe it. I've played Animal Crossing, but I wouldn't give it Game of the Year. So I haven't played any of the other ones that got nominated. But I definitely think it done a lot to deserve it. I don't think because it's inclusive, that should take away. They didn't just chuck characters in here that for the sake of inclusion. They were doing that. I feel like the characters would definitely be different and just fit stereotypes. And they don't do that. They are
they're integral to the story, to the plot.
They have a lot of depth.
It's not just like My Black Friend, which is a thing that can be done.
I feel like you had to have a revenge story between two daughters, essentially, is what they are, because that's the dynamic of the story, is you took my dad, I'm going to take your dad. That's essentially what's happened here. And that's why there is so much conflict, because it had to be someone that had that connection, that strong bond. And the fact that their stories are so similar, yet so different and so intertwined is what makes it that. I don't see why people use that as an excuse to take away from it. No, it's excellent storytelling. There's no spin on this that takes away from it being excellent storytelling.
Yeah.
And if you think just because it has characters in it that are very representative of real people, then maybe you need to make more friends. And find out that there are people that look like this, and are like this, and get some variety in your life.
It's good advice. Good advice. So I've also not played many of the Game of the Year contenders, so it's kind of hard for me to say. But just I'm glad you pulled out that definition, Tazziii, because I can't disagree with that. I think the game they've made is just an amazing use of the console. And for me, the key thing it does is that it pushes what video games can do narratively. Now, I think there are genuine criticisms of it, and I'll put this in the show notes because I came across a video by the Completionist and who broke down some sort of genuine, I thought, valid criticisms of the game in a way that didn't just sort of devolve into, they just, include diversity for diversity's sake. It was looking at the actual game itself. So I'll include that for people to check out. But I think overall what it does in terms of genuinely pushing video games in terms of how they can deliver a narrative that isn't just empty run and gun. Obviously, I'm not saying like all games are that, but it does more. Like it does more than that. I think that should be sort of highlighted, celebrated, and other people should try and do more of that. And just because a game isn't fun, like Midas says, just because a game isn't necessarily fun doesn't mean it's a bad story, and just because a game doesn't give you the story you were expecting doesn't mean it's a bad story. So yeah, I think there's just a lot in here to appreciate, and I don't know if we're going to see a third part of it. I feel like we might. I don't know. Would you want to see a third part?
I want to see more stories from this universe and from this world. I would be happy to like have that explore different mediums as well. And like, because the world is so interesting, especially with like introducing the Seraphites. Obviously, we've had Fedra, we've had all these opposing communities and powers. At the end of it, we get introduced to, I can't remember what they're called, but we're slavery guys.
Oh yeah, I've forgotten the name.
Like, and so there's so many stories that I'd love to unfold, and I wouldn't be opposed to it being in non-game form as well.
Okay, Midas, what do you think? Do you want to see a third part?
I'm not sure if I want to see a third part. I feel like Joel and Ellie's story is done, and I'm happy to conclude that story. I would interested, and I'm really surprised at even saying this, but I would really be interested to see a DLC spin-off with Abby and Lev, like what they've done after they've left. But I wouldn't want a full-blown game from that. I would just like almost like a DLC, like the Left Behind DLC that they did before. But yeah, I'm kind of drained of this world now, man. Like it's taken everything out of me. Like the first game was what my most beloved games ever. The second game was like the emotional roller coaster that I never thought I was ever going to experience. And I'm just like, I'm done. But Naughty Dog are incredible, and if they feel like they've got another amazing story to tell in this world, I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna get involved.
Totally. Okay. Yeah. No, I think I'd agree with that. I feel like I'd be happy to see what has happened to Lev and Abby in their relationship. But yeah, I'm always up for more sort of story. If there's a story in there, then I think Naughty Dog can sort of bring it out and add something new in terms of like narratives and video games. So that's what we think, or part of what we think. If you're sort of listening and you have thoughts of these things, we haven't covered every single thing. If you want to give your feedback, you can always do that. We're feedback@mayamada.com. We are on Twitter and Instagram. So before we wrap up this episode, I'm just going to give a storytelling tip for the week. And I talked about the flashbacks, which I kept coming back to because I was genuinely interested in the way they've been done in this game, and just making me think about how flashbacks are used in stories in general. So in The Last of Us Part 2, it's used heavily to fill in the gaps between the first game and the current events, and just provide the context of the relationship between Joel and Ellie, as well as put Abby's journey into a new light. Obviously, it didn't maybe have the intended effect as soon as for Midas, but At least I was getting something from those flashbacks. And there was one flashback in particular I wanted to highlight, and it's after a tense interaction with Dina, and Ellie goes and finds a guitar in the theater and thinks about Joel. So we see, going to that time in the museum, we see that time when things are much happier. Joel is teaching Ellie to play the guitar, then takes her on a trip to the museum, which comes to the happiest point in this game, where Ellie puts on a space helmet and just her imagination sort of takes over. As it's like The Last of Us, the happy memory doesn't stay forever. And soon after that, they come across a piece of graffiti, and it's a firefly symbol with the word liars written below it. And this just provides more context to the relationship between Joel and Ellie, as well as foreshadowing like a later point, sort of a later flashback to an earlier time, if that makes sense, where Ellie demands that Joel finally tells her the truth about the events at the Firefly Hospital. So, like I said, I was just thinking about the use of flashbacks in stories in general. And for anyone who is making their own story, and has come across this consideration, there are pros and cons to using flashbacks. It's something that I'm thinking about as I put together what will be the next part of the Hot Lunch story, the 11th hour manga story from the mayamada universe. So it's just something that just tends to be on my mind, is like, what's the good considerations around using flashbacks? So here are some things that I thought of in terms of whether to use flashbacks and how to use flashbacks. So number one is, do you need a flashback? So flashbacks are best used when there's an interesting event in the character's backstory that also matters to the main plot. So it's that time you spend looking back should also push the present of the story forward. So like I mentioned with The Last of Us, like foreshadowing or providing context to events to come, like Joel confessing, or providing fresh context to events that have already taken place, like Abby killing Joel and then finding sort of more about her through flashbacks. Number two is to have a good trigger for the flashback, and something in the present needs to trigger the need to go back to a memory. So this is something that has meaning to the character and the story in the present day. And it usually revolves around senses. So the sound of music that can trigger a memory of a birthday party, the smell of cooking that brings back memories of the last meal as a family, or touching a guitar that brings back happier thoughts of a father figure. So triggers also apply when moving from the flashback back to the present. So you having those triggers as an entry and exit point will just help orientate the audience and make the experience feel more organic as well. And third and final is to be brief and sparing with your flashbacks. So this is the one rule that The Last of Us Part 2 probably doesn't follow, maybe for good reason. But in general, you typically don't need a lot of flashbacks, and you don't need to spend too much time with them. So it's all about focusing on the key parts of the flashback that are relevant to the present of the story. So an overuse of them that goes beyond just showing the important information or moving the plot forward veers into exposition territory. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know I'm not a fan of exposition, especially in anime and manga, but we're talking video games here. So if you find yourself using flashbacks to communicate information that your audience should already know as part of the main story, there may be a larger problem with the plot structure that you have. So a few things to think about. Let us know what you think, whether it's a comic, manga, video game, book. Stories are sort of all the same. It's just a medium that changes. So yeah, that is our story tip. Tazziii, let's find out what our guest is up to.
So we're just going to get Mr. Midas's details on what Mr. Midas is up to, what he's been doing, any interesting projects coming up. So what have you got in the works?
I haven't got that much in the works because it's Christmas and I'm ready to take some time off because it's been a manic year. But I've got a show that comes out every Friday on Sky called WTF on Jinx Esports TV that you can watch on Sky Channel 433, or you can watch it on jinx.tv, and it's an international show, so you can watch it in Canada, Africa, the Philippines, the UK. I'm working on my own YouTube because of COVID. I started my own YouTube this year, Mr Midas Games, where I'm always doing the reviews, podcasts. I've got you on there, Tazziii. Always doing content for my YouTube, which is youtube.com/Mr Midas Games. But you know what? More than anything, just enjoying some downtime, man. Just really having some time to shut off, play some more games, and just relax, man, and just get ready be energetic for 2021.
I've seen the videos, like you put out a lot of videos, and having now being in a place where I'm having to edit video and edit audio, I now know how much work that is. So every time I see a new video from you, like, whoa, you're putting out a lot, because I know what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it doesn't stop, my G. It does not stop.
Yeah, so we will put all the links in the show notes / description / we'll put some in chat. I'm still getting used to doing the live podcast recordings. But definitely go check Mr Midas out. Like Nigel said, puts in like a massive amount of work, constantly seeing new stuff come out of Mr Midas's channel and everything that you do. So we're going to get some feedback and questions that we've gathered off our email and social media. Our first couple of questions are from Rihanna McKeith over on Twitter. The first comment is, I really identified with the story of Last of Us 1, redemption, father-daughter bond, but struggled with the revenge narrative of Last of Us Part 2. It's still brilliant, but unlike The Last of Us 1, I keep wishing I could turn back and abandon the story. I think we can all kind of get that, and have spoken on multiple points about
I literally put the controller down at certain points. And it was like, I literally walked away. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And then also has a question: how long could you play The Last of Us 2 in one sitting? And do you feel it's a horror game? There's quite a debate between horror and action. Would love to hear where you stand on it.
Well, me and Tazziii have completely different points of view of what a horror game is. I don't consider this a horror game, but that underground scene is taken straight out of a Resident Evil game. So when I was playing that, I was like, everyone who's scared of this game, I understand it for this scene, because this scene is very horror-esque, but I don't consider it a horror game per se.
I'm going to go with it is a horror game. There are multiple moments where it scares you. So there's actual jump scares in this one as well, and I feel like there wasn't as many jump scares in part 1, but there's definitely way more jump scares in this one, and I had all the settings way down on low, way down. That was the only way I was going to get through this game in time, because I did have to take breaks, and it wasn't so much because of the story being heavy, and more because zombies are terrifying, but also people are terrifying in this game. And like, I'm just trying to get to the next bit of the story, and the zombies attacking me, or the Seraphites attacking me with their whistling, which just adds another level of creepiness to it. And yes, so I'm gonna go with it's an action horror with a little bit of drama. A lot of drama. Okay. I'm going, I don't class it as a horror game. So, but it does have flakes. It's like horror sprinkled in there. So, in terms of like how long to play it, I usually play for things like hour or so. But that's less because of the game and more because of my short attention span when it comes to play. Like, I find it hard to binge things. So like an hour or two, and I'm good. I need to do something else. So I feel like that just naturally fit with the tone of this game, because any longer it's a lot to take in one sitting. So yeah, that was me. I think if ideally I would have taken way more breaks and could have done like 1 or 2 hours in a sitting, but under the circumstances, I needed to finish it in time for this podcast.
Well.
And
you did well.
as we know, only just done it, so I've had actually sat and played it for like 4 to 6 hours at a time. But while doing that, I couldn't just sit there and play it for those 4 to 6 hours. I would have to like get up and get a snack and take a moment, just mainly because my heart's sitting here. I'm like, when am I going to get killed? Like, what is around this corner? I can't deal with this. So yeah. The next question is from Thing Yuri on Twitter, who's also in the chat now, actually. Who are the real monsters, the infected or the humans? To me, the humans are scarier.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because you know what you're getting with the infected, but the humans, you don't know, especially when the Seraphites come in that whistling, and that freaks me out more than, apart from the Rat King bit, that freaked me out. So I'd go with the humans, and that's what I like about these types of games, similar to The Walking Dead, where the zombies become sort of the environment, and then it's about the people, and how your trust in people just goes way down in those sort of circumstances, and you don't know what you're going to get with each interaction. So I'd agree with that.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
The infected didn't kill Joel. That's all I got to say. The infected didn't kill Joel.
There you go. I think that's it. Yeah.
I definitely think the humans are scary, but I don't think something being scary makes it a monster. I think the humans are humans, which is highly complex creatures that have
motivations.
They have baseline like animalistic instincts that, if are allowed to take over, can turn them into less human. But we have choice and free will, and I think we're complicated. But I wouldn't say monsters, but they're definitely scarier because you don't know what they're going to do. Zombies are more predictable, and you don't know what humans' motives are. You don't know if they've decided that they are good or evil. Well, I suppose everyone thinks they're good in their own eyes. But yeah, they're complicated.
I agree with that.
But definitely scary. Yeah, definitely the Seraphites were the scariest for me, because they were the most like unknown for most of that. We didn't know who they were at first. We like really didn't know who they were. We know why we didn't know what they were up to. They were just these people whistling in the darkness. So yeah. So just a reminder that if you do want to send us any feedback, you can do so feedback@mayamada.com, or you can hit us up on our social media @mayamada on Twitter, @mayamadatees on Instagram, or @Tazziii on both.
And that brings us to the end. I think we've also frozen the stream window. So yeah, maybe that's a good point to call things to an end. So hopefully people can still hear me as I wrap up the show, and say thank you to Mr. Midas, who is currently eyes half open on the stream. But thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate talking to you lot about this. I'm so glad that we got to talk about 2. I can't believe there was a 2. And yeah, man, thanks so much for having me on the show. And everyone, just check out the content, and peace.
Yeah.